Is reality a consciousness simulation? For centuries, humanity has asked the same fundamental question in countless different ways. What is reality? Is the world around us truly as it appears, or is there something deeper hidden beneath the surface of our everyday experience? From ancient philosophers to modern physicists, from spiritual traditions to artificial intelligence researchers, thinkers have repeatedly arrived at a surprisingly similar possibility. What if reality is not simply a physical universe, but a kind of consciousness simulation? At first glance, the phrase consciousness simulation sounds like science fiction. It evokes images of virtual worlds, advanced computers, and futuristic technologies. Yet the idea is much older than modern technology. Long before computers existed, spiritual traditions around the world proposed that physical reality might be a projection, an illusion, or a temporary experience occurring within a larger field of consciousness. Today, advances in neuroscience, quantum physics, and artificial intelligence have brought these ancient questions back into mainstream discussion. While no one can definitively prove whether reality is a consciousness simulation, exploring the possibility forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about existence, identity, and the nature of consciousness itself. One of the most intriguing aspects of human experience is that we never encounter reality directly. Everything we perceive is filtered through our senses and interpreted by our brains. We assume we are seeing the world as it truly is, but science suggests otherwise. Consider color. The color red does not exist objectively in the universe. What exists are electromagnetic wavelengths. Our brains translate specific wavelengths into the experience we call red. The same applies to sound, taste, smell, and touch. Reality, as we experience it, is not the external world itself, but a model constructed inside our minds. If our experience of reality is already a mental simulation generated by the brain, then a deeper question emerges. What if the entire universe operates according to a similar principle? Some philosophers argue that consciousness is not something produced by reality. Instead, reality may be produced by consciousness. This perspective is known as idealism, a philosophical position that proposes consciousness is the fundamental substance of existence. According to idealism, matter is not primary, consciousness is. The physical world emerges from consciousness rather than the other way around. This idea appears in many spiritual traditions. In Hindu philosophy, the concept of Maya describes the physical world as an illusion or appearance that conceals a deeper reality. In Buddhism, the self and the material world are often described as transient phenomena arising within consciousness. Even the philosopher Plato suggested that what humans perceive are merely shadows of a more fundamental reality. While these ideas may sound mystical, some interpretations of modern physics raise surprisingly similar questions. Quantum mechanics, one of the most successful scientific theories ever developed, describes a world that behaves in ways that seem deeply connected to observation. Particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until they are measured. The act of observation appears to play a role in determining physical outcomes. Although many physicists caution against exaggerated interpretations of these findings, the strange relationship between observation and reality has led some thinkers to wonder whether consciousness is more fundamental than we currently understand. The simulation hypothesis takes a different but related approach. Popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom, the theory suggests that advanced civilizations may eventually develop the ability to create simulated realities containing conscious beings. If such simulations become common, statistically speaking, it may be more likely that we are living inside a simulation than in the original base reality. However, the consciousness simulation concept differs from a purely technological simulation. In a computer simulation, consciousness exists inside the program. In a consciousness simulation, consciousness itself may be the program. Rather than imagining ourselves as characters inside a giant cosmic computer, we might instead imagine reality as an experience generated within a universal field of awareness. Individual minds would be like temporary perspectives through which consciousness explores itself. This possibility raises fascinating questions about identity. Most people view themselves as separate individuals. We have our own memories, personalities, and experiences. Yet many spiritual traditions suggest that this separateness is only apparent. Beneath our individual identities lies a shared consciousness from which all experience arises. If reality is a consciousness simulation, individuality may function much like a character in a dream. While dreaming, each character appears separate. Upon waking, however, it becomes clear that every character originated from the same dreamer. Could human beings be something similar? Could our separate identities be temporary expressions of a larger consciousness exploring reality through countless unique perspectives? Such an idea may sound impossible to verify, yet it offers an intriguing explanation for certain aspects of human experience. For example, people often report moments of profound interconnectedness. During meditation, near-death experiences, psychedelic experiences, or moments of intense awe, individuals sometimes describe a feeling that the boundaries between themselves and the world have dissolved. They report experiencing reality as a unified whole rather than a collection of separate objects. Skeptics argue that these experiences are simply unusual brain states. Others suggest they may provide glimpses into a deeper level of reality. The truth remains uncertain. Perhaps the strongest argument against the consciousness simulation hypothesis is that it may be impossible to test scientifically. Science depends on observation and experimentation. If consciousness itself is the foundation of reality, then any experiment we perform is already taking place within the system we are trying to investigate. This creates a paradox similar to a character inside a video game attempting to prove the existence of the computer running the game. The tools available to the character are limited by the reality they inhabit. As a result, the consciousness simulation hypothesis currently remains more philosophical than scientific. Yet its value may not depend on whether it can be proven. The question forces us to confront one of the greatest mysteries in existence, consciousness itself. Despite enormous advances in neuroscience, no one fully understands why consciousness exists. Scientists can identify brain regions associated with thoughts, emotions, and perceptions, but the subjective experience of being aware remains unexplained. Why does seeing the color blue feel like something? Why does pain hurt? Why does awareness exist at all? This challenge is known as the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains one of the deepest unsolved questions in science. If consciousness cannot be fully explained as a product of physical processes, then perhaps we have been asking the wrong question all along. Instead of asking how matter creates consciousness, we may eventually need to ask how consciousness creates matter. Whether reality is a consciousness simulation, a physical universe, or something beyond either description, one fact remains undeniable. Our experience of existence is profoundly mysterious. We live in a universe capable of producing stars, galaxies, life, thought, and self-awareness. Somehow, through a process we do not yet understand, the universe has become aware of itself through conscious beings like us. Perhaps reality is a simulation created by an advanced civilization. Perhaps it is a dream unfolding within a universal mind. Perhaps consciousness emerges from matter in ways we have not yet discovered. Or perhaps reality is something stranger than any theory humanity has imagined. The most honest answer may be that we do not know. Yet there is beauty in that uncertainty. The possibility that reality is a consciousness simulation reminds us that existence is still full of unanswered questions. It challenges our assumptions, expands our imagination, and encourages humility in the face of mystery. In the end, whether consciousness creates reality or reality creates consciousness, the question itself reveals something extraordinary. Humanity remains a species capable of wondering, and perhaps that capacity for wonder is the most remarkable feature of reality, whatever it ultimately turns out to be.